Jesus is coming for you. He is the hound of heaven, and he will leave no soul left, including Dracula belongs to Christ. We're back for another Things Hidden discussion. I am still recovering from a mysterious assault on my voice. It's been taking the whole country by storm. People have been having hoarse voice for long times, months sometimes. And I've been busy doing things offline and online and so forth and so on as I've tried to recover my voice. I've done a couple shows with my hoarse voice, but I have to continue. I'm back in the studio, and we have to continue. Even though I sound like this, I still think it's an acceptable sound for the show. I just sound like I'm trying to talk like Alex Jones a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
Now, Surit, you're doing your best Jefferson Davis impression with your new hairstyle. I like it. Jefferson
Who's Jeff?
Davis, he was the president of the Confederate States of America when they tried to secede, and they did not succeed.
Yeah, I recently saw a meme of Thomas Massey. They made his portrait into like a Confederate general with the old, newspaper style headline, and he was actually looking the part
Yeah,
with his beard and all.
yeah,
Like, it's so funny because 10 years ago he looked like an absolute nerd.
yeah.
Right now he looks different.
Well, one of the topics that I have talked about a lot, and I've done this in different ways over the years, and you've done so as well, is exploring some of these same issues. And I thought we'd get into it today. I haven't been watching the news as closely as I used to, but I still am doing show prep all the time and research for our show, for the various different podcasts that we do, um, and 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 this theme that I've always explored is the idea of disembodiment, or what I call incarnational theology, the need for incarnational Christianity. And this has been kind of the running thesis of my work for a long time at neighborschoice.com and on the show, the radio show, as you know. And I want to approach it again because, look, sir, I mean, can you see what's happening today? We have all of this complete chaos going on right now with the AI. The rise of AI is scaring people left and right. People are concerned about, deep fakes and, being able to fake and make it look like you did a crime that you didn't do, or, they're going to be able to do so many different things to change people's conception of reality. And people are already concerned that AI brain is already rotting the masses faster than social media algorithm doom scrolling brain did. So now that you have two layers of disembodiment in the same digital interface, it's no wonder that people like Dr. Ray Peat and Marshall McLuhan and others that been influenced by were so keen on getting people out of the digital world and back to the analogical world, to the analog world, where things had tangible embodiments, like a guitar, you touched it and you could feel the strings, versus today, the digital synthetic guitar that we listen to. And the implications that that has on the human person are quite profound. I am not a person that says that the digital world is evil per se, but at the same time, I think because we have such a disembodied culture, a disembodied Christianity, the way in which the AI and the doom scrolling algorithms are taking over people's sense of reality, it's fertile ground. In other words, this the wickedness that can come from these things is quite able to take root because of the fertile ground of disembodied Christianity and disembodied culture that we have been in for some time. What do you think? I mean, look at those Epstein files. Every day they're saying this is a fake Epstein leak. This is a real one. This one is a fake of a fake of a fake of a fake of a fake. This was put in here by the deep state to fake us about the fake about the fake. It's just an endless insanity there.
Yeah, I mean, people have previously we had a generation prior to the internet, we had a generation who was brought up on television, and therefore, as a result, you could see that there's people have forgotten largely starting from that generation of television of how to communicate. So they became more used to having a one-way conversation as opposed to having a conversation back and forth with whoever they are supposed to be with. So we see this communication disconnectedness carry over into the internet age, where when you give every person the platform that every celebrity has, that person has almost like a spirit of a little mini celebrity, television celebrity, whenever he goes on the internet, on social media. And as a result, there's far too much importance given to each person's statement. It's almost like back 20 or 30 years ago, we would have a headline from a few selected curated personalities, but now there's like headlines, multiple zillions of headlines, and we can't catch up with them. So it's a weird bizarre celebrity culture
Well,
that's
I remember a few years ago we were talking about if it ever comes out of the files about some of those terrible things that were alluded to with Epstein and we'll call it, all those food allegories that were mentioned in the Hillary Clinton emails, WikiLeaks, and all that stuff. We always used to say, I wonder if the world is so cynical and jaded that if it were to come out even more clear cut that it was true, would they even do anything about it? And that's what we're seeing right now is people are losing their minds because there's two problems. They're sometimes losing their minds and saying the only solution is now violence against this stuff. But at the other hand, there's this they're losing their minds because so many people don't care. It's become so virtual reality that it's a meme. You see this guy, Nicholas Fuentes, and he's talking about how cool Epstein is, like it's a video game meme that this guy was doing these things and having what could appear to be serious crimes against God's creation, serious violent attacks against God's creation at the very heart of how the power systems of the world are glued together. And yet, people who are supposed to be algorithmically propped up as the vanguard against it are revealing their true colors, which is that they are against them because they want to be them. Rene Girard talks about this a lot. Be careful who your enemies are; you will become like them. And this line between adoration and murder is very thin. And the line between a dutiful court jester that's there to critique the establishment in a way that's very convenient for the establishment sometimes reveals its colors when when you see the wickedness being revealed and it's so cynical and so nihilistic and so disembodied that it's become a cool thing to like this guy by the people who are supposed to be against him. Have you seen this?
yeah, it's because this is a carryover again from the 90s, where the peculiar nature of 90s culture was that it was very black humor. And if you listen to stand-up comedians from that time, or even from the 80s, if you listen to some of the stand-up comedians who were really like pushed to the front in celebrity culture, The comedian, the comedy bits would always be some hot take, like some edgy stuff, which always had like a racial characteristic to it. Sometimes it had a very sexist characteristic to it. So, like as a result, where like this, we have this now new generation which does not know how to carry a conversation aside from like constantly giving hot takes. You know, just
What is
again
a
like a
hot
carryover.
take?
A hot take is basically like something that's supposed to be very controversial.
Yeah.
Like for example, it's in boxing, it's usually admitted that Muhammad Ali is the greatest of all time, right? But you would not say, oh, hot take, he was highly overrated. So this like always a contrarian spirit of contrarianism, like it's a kind of like that thing. And people like the person that you mentioned, Fuentes, if you see his episodes, like if you see a lot of his material, it's like hot take after hot take after hot take, n word this, f word that, constantly. It's almost like you can't talk like a normal person. You can't go one sentence without using a very controversial word, a very taboo word. Like so it's a carryover, and it's like a carryover from the 90s. It's a bit of a celebrity culture seeping in into the undifferentiated landscape. It's like every
Well, the
person.
celebrity culture you speak of is the attempt to become an external mediator of desire in a sea of undifferentiated blobs.
Yeah,
The issue
which is
is,
why
yeah,
it fails. This
yeah,
celebrity culture, like mimesis, imitating, like
yeah,
trying to be a celebrity through Twitter or Instagram. Like we have, like there's like a tier below celebrity culture right now called influencer,
yeah.
or like a social media podcaster or whatever. And these people are, some people say like these are the new celebrities. So whatever the case, it's totally fails in its ability to influence people in at least in a positive way, at least. Other than like, what it succeeds in is it creates further undifferentiation, further chaos, further mimetic envy, mimetic rivalry, and it really doesn't create anything positive value.
You're talking about all the podcasts and stuff.
Yeah, podcast, and not just the podcast, but the TikTok artists and Instagram
Are
creators.
they more honest? Are the TikTok artists just more honest versions of what I am trying to do with this show?
Not really. They're not honest. I would
Like
say they're.
I've dressed up a pig, which is really just manifested with TikTok and Instagram's. The format is still gonna. The medium is the message. The
Yeah,
medium
yeah. I
is the
think
message.
like in terms of like getting
Can't
social
escape it.
media clout, in terms of like getting internet clout, TikTok artists are much more upfront and honest. They don't
Yeah,
claim to do anything otherwise. They straight up still say upfront that yeah, like I'm here to advertise, or I'm here to increase my subscriber count or gain revenue from what I'm doing. There's no like it's a kind of nihilistic way of performance art.
yeah,
There's no real message to it.
yeah. I think that the things that I've tried to point to in this show have been, generally speaking, things that are incarnational. For example, um, I've always tried to give actionable things that you can do in your real life when you watch my show. Like Rene Girard teaches us to be mindful of who we desire and what we do in our actions, which very much has a place in the world of reality, not the world of meme world. When you pop the bubble of how much desire is not from you, you burst that bubble and explode that myth. The consequences of it are very humbling and very incarnationally in the right direction. The same thing for Ray Pete. the biology, that biology matters, and being stuck in your mind and your feelings and your emotions in a learned helplessness is also a psyop that we don't have to live in. We can get out of it by taking control of our uh, endocrine system and our metabolic system in different ways, even if it's hard and there's a journey to it. That's incarnational. That's wholesome. I talk about staying out of debt. I talk about creating innovations and discoveries, uh, getting seed oils out of your life. These things, we were talking about them before they became meme. So, sir, that's the point I'm trying to say is kind of like it feels like we say things earnestly. And I don't think it's dishonest to do media as a career, but it is a tricky thing because we were saying the seed oil things not because we thought this was going to be a meme, but because I've suffered greatly because of those things. You know, it's out of suffering, out of skin in the game, and seeing my family members, people who were my, grandmother and things like that, who were lied to eat omega-6 rich diet, causing all kinds of horrible diseases that attack the temple of God that God created. So I tell these things in earnest back in 2018 to a mass audience when nobody even understood really what the heck they were. And now they become, little memes that people just say like part of nihilism, avoid the cedos, like it's a joke. What I don't know. I guess my point is that we have to tell the truth, even if they try to meme everything, including look what they've done to Jesus. I guess that's the point I'm trying to move us towards. Look
No,
what
no,
they
I
did to
agree with
Jesus.
you. I agree with you.
Should we not talk
The
about Jesus
problem,
because most people who talk about Jesus have memed him and used him as a weapon to beat the shit out of everybody in history? Exactly, right?
yeah, like, but the issue is not the medium. The issue is not the technology. The issue is the way groups and social, like a society, mimetically engages with one another.
Yeah.
That's the real issue. And like, of course, like people when they get close to any kind of technology, there is a temptation to be want to be the next big celebrity or whatever. But the issue is how you can resist that temptation and spread your message effectively. But all I'm saying is that it's going to be increasingly difficult as we progress through the years. Like there's going to be less and less people, especially that we can see this demonstrated from by the Zoomer generation and the generation after that. Is that generation, like it's considered an impossibility if that generation, like if someone from that generation is not engaging on social media, whether it's through OnlyFans, whether it's through TikTok, whether it's through Instagram. It's like it's a given. It's almost like this virtual badge of identification that you have to carry all the time in order to be considered a legitimate person.
Yeah.
Anything outside of that, like when you talked about earnestness is seen as totally passé nowadays because of this culture that we're in right now. It's going to be harder and harder for earnest people uh, to spread their messages in this culture that's heavily saturated by nihilism, heavily saturated by hedonism, heavily saturated by capitalism at all
They strip
costs.
mine. They strip mine people like an object, like what they
Yeah,
tried to
it's
do to Rene
complete
Girard. They
objectification.
tried to
It's
do
like,
that with Rene Girard. You know, all the people that came and went who tried to
yeah.
exploit what I've been doing. They tried to take what I've done, which is an authentic version of trying to explore these ideas and move them further down the line. And so many people have come and gone along the way to try to become the Rene Girard guru, and they've come and gone. Um, and They're a dime a dozen. But the uh, at the bottom line is that the real Sting may or may not be in their price range. But the only thing for sure about Sting is nothing's for sure. And that's the thing, is that's the difference, is that There's a lot of people who don't want to roll up their sleeves and actually sit with a thing. They want to turn it into a gimmick that they turn into a newsletter for $5 a month or whatever. I haven't paywalled any of our content. None of our content's been paywalled. It's all been given away. We have no advertisements on this show. We did when we were on talk radio. Radio is a different medium. Uh, but even then, we cleared them out and we took the ads out when we put them up on podcasts. So most of the people who have listened to our show, very little have we had any advertisements. We don't even ask for contributions. This has been an attempt to actually pursue the truth in media. And I don't know what success it will have at the end of the day when it's wrapped up. But I do believe that there is a reason to be in this conversation, to be in this arena, in other words. If we, it all, that whole saying, they say, all that it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. And if good men do nothing in the arena of discourse, then what do we have to complain about when evil triumphs?
Well, right now, the good men or the people who are supposed to be the good men are too busy chasing clout on the internet.
What's
So
the
it's
difference? Let's
become.
let's split that open a little bit. We're going to go disembodied a bit further, but let's just split that open a little bit. You made a good point. Okay, you said people are chasing clout. What is the difference between chasing clout and trying to be the best at what you do? I mean, is Michael Jordan chasing clout when he practices more than anybody else and slams, wins championships, runs a little faster, throws a little better, shoots a little better? Is that chasing clout? Obviously, yes. There's some clout there, but there's also mixed in a chase for excellence to be competitive. And that's not a masculine trait that we should get out of our lives. So, how do we know the line? That's a great question. How do we know the line between are you just chasing clout, which we can throw to anybody? And I know you're not doing that, versus just, trying to have a healthy version of, a competitive drive to be ambitious.
Well, I mean, I don't mean by chasing clout. I don't mean that it's pursuing excellence in what you do is chasing clout. But Michael Jordan is it can be seen as quite the opposite of chasing clout. He actually put in the hard work, and he was not a flamboyant flamboyant kind of personality, unlike his teammate Dennis Rodman. Like Dennis Rodman is somebody who can be seen as chasing clout, but even Dennis Rodman had the talent to back
Yeah,
up what
exactly.
he's
Yeah.
saying. So chasing clout in can be seen in the sense of like is pursuing fame and glory and applause of the masses, not the
Without the
individual,
hard
not the
work,
person.
doing your talking without the scoreboard showing the proof of your work, right?
Yeah, and oftentimes, especially when we focus on the internet, it can be chasing a vanity metric, right? It can be chasing likes and subscribers or views. So, like a lot of people, like especially among the younger generation, think that if your video doesn't have like a lot of views, then it's kind of like you're a loser. That's how they say. But if your videos have like thousands of views, then you're legitimate. So it's almost like a mimetic vanity marker. It's a vanity metric, but it's seen as a mimetic marker, like a uniform a priest puts on, or something like that. Like if I don't put on the priest uniform, you won't listen to me. Like if I put on the priest uniform and I spew all kinds of BS and weird our stupid stuff, then I'm seen as legitimate. So that's kind of like clout. You have the credibility of like it's not really a credential, but it's a clout. It's something that's totally irrelevant to the content you're providing. It's completely superficial. It has no value at all in terms of providing a solution. So it's like nobody is free from that in this day and age. Every one of us falls into that temptation. I don't have any problem saying that I have many times fallen into this temptation of chasing clout on the internet. But I think being aware of it is very important, especially if we are to stay sane in this digital modern hellscape that we're in right now. The sanity, like there's a quote by some monk, I don't know the name, but it says like in the future people will say you're, if you are sane, people will say you're crazy, you're crazy. And that's really the time we're in right now. If I don't have any digital engagement, I don't have any virtual engagement, I'll be seen as somebody who's completely reclusive, somebody like a billionaire living secluded in his mansion, uh, growing big nails and peeing into mason jars. It's like that level of reclusiveness, that level of outsider that's being assigned to somebody who is not really who doesn't really take online internet seriously. And the internet itself is a very, it's a very manipulative stage, right? That kind of like the way the algorithms affect what you put out, it's all controlled, it's all very highly manipulative. There's little room for honest conversations.
Yeah, I've seen some movies recently, and what's so weird, sir, is that it feels like, and this has been this way for some time, but it's now setting in as it change as the years continue. It's like it really feels like a subversive act, even though Hollywood has always been subversive. It feels almost like a subversive act to the digital hellscape culture to watch a movie in a movie theater now. You know what I mean? Like you're doing something that's kind of a rebel move to do. Even though Hollywood was always notorious for shaping rebellious, subversion against, good values, Hollywood is still Christ haunted. Like Hollywood looks like church compared to a lot of the movies look like church compared to the internet culture. You know what I mean? Because they're still pushing ideas from artists' dreams, which is has some meaning, even if they try to push nihilism in there. I'll give you an example. Like I saw that movie, the Dracula movie recently, very Christian film. I mean, yes, they try to push their little weaselly stuff in there, but I mean, did you see that movie, the French one with
Yeah.
the guy? I thought that was explicitly Christian. I thought, my goodness, it feels like they're just preaching now at this point. That was a
Well,
Hollywood.
there was I discussed Dracula is a very uh, I'll talk about the television stuff later on, but Dracula is a very, it's a pretty good cultural barometer to decide, to to see where societies, how societies throughout the years
Yeah, you're
treat
saying they
the
float. You got
monster.
to float a Dracula balloon up to check the thermometer temperature
No,
every
I mean,
few
like
years.
if you see the Dracula
Yeah,
movies, like starting from the old German silent movie Nosferatu, where he's seen as very hideous. He's seen as a completely otherworldly character, completely dehumanized, to the point where now Dracula is not beyond redemption anymore, not beyond salvation anymore. Like if you see the Dracula movies from the middle of the 20th century, there was a very clear-cut way, the solution to him, and that is to drive a stake through his heart and cut off his head, that kind of thing. But now, like the latest version of Dracula that you're talking about, his death is actually a self-sacrificial death, where the Abraham Van Helsing character, played by Christoph Waltz, very explicitly states to him that like the problem is not God, the problem is not the curse that was placed on Dracula, but the problem is that Dracula is continually perpetuating violence again and again, and he's only like creating new justification with every violence he conducts. And that's like a realization for the Dracula character. It's like a moment of clarity for Dracula. uh,
yeah.
so he finally like sacrifices himself to
That
free
movie
all
was,
his
yeah, that movie
victims.
was very beautifully nonviolent in a way because
Yeah.
the priest walks in and he doesn't have anything. He does have the little spike thing, but it's almost like a labor of sacrifice on his part. He's
Yeah.
just said, "Look, you do it to yourself. I'll be the conduit for you to do it to yourself to self-sacrifice." Which is kind of Christological. That's very Christ-like to say, "Look, I'll be the one to help you self-sacrifice." That's what Christ does for
And it also
humanity.
like to like bring first part of the conversation here a little bit. Like one thing you'll notice on the internet is a very like black peeling kind of thing, like as if like society is moving towards a
Right.
very doomsday kind of
But movies don't have that.
path.
So a lot of movies
but,
don't
but
have that. Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, but
Yeah.
no, well, like to your point, David, if at all, like it seems that God has already, God is slowly destroying celebrity culture. He is destroying all of these so-called centers of influence, and he is bringing the least of these up front. He's bringing the marginalized, those who have been neglected by society. He is bringing them to the forefront,
Like
like
Dracula,
Dracula.
yeah.
Dracula has traditionally been
A
movie world's
scapegoat.
favorite scapegoat. He's like the classic scapegoat. Like even if he's afraid of crosses or like silver or garlic or
Yeah, he's more
whatever.
hated than Frankenstein. Frankenstein, you have sympathy
Yeah.
for because he has disabilities.
Well, Frankenstein is also was initially also hated. Frankenstein
Yeah, I
was
know,
like
but I'm just
seen
saying,
as
even in recent culture, he's been the more lovable of the scapegoats between Dracula and him.
yeah, 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 yeah. There's like people still try to, and I discussed this with Shannon in one of his episodes. Like the people like to think people actually want a lot of Christians, actually so-called Christians who don't understand the non-violence message of the Bible. They actually want Dracula to stay a
Yeah,
monster. They want Vlad the Impaler to impale people left, right, and center. But while they themselves sit on couches eating on Cheetos. So
yeah,
like Drac, Dracula, like it matters how we think of so-called monsters in our fiction and imagination. Like if the stories we tell each other, they fixated on eliminating the big bad dehumanized monster, our society is not really going to find a solution to any of the problems. We're always going to we're always going to keep searching for new Epsteins,
yeah,
even long after the real ones have been unraveled.
yeah. Um, but yeah, that movie was like explicit. We've always talked on this show about how movies deal with self-sacrifice. Christ owns Hollywood, okay? Not the Zionists, not the warmongers, not the Illuminati. Christ owns Hollywood. And they don't understand that. Religionists don't understand that. They think what you see on the plot is what's really going on. But what's really going on is that Christ owns the dreamscape. Christ owns the world's dreams. And when you have dreams and you tell a story, I believe, or you're watching a movie or you want to write a movie, you have to channel the dreams. And when you channel the dreams, God and Christ incarnates the truth of everything manifested in the dreams. So when you go to watch movies in Hollywood, you're getting a chance to see how Christ owns everything. And you're right. And like I said earlier, I feel like Hollywood films are more Christian now than the internet. The internet is filled with all these people like Fuentes and all these
Yeah,
folks talking about the metaphysical Christianity while they talk so awful about their neighbor because they're a different race. Oh, and
yeah.
then you got
Sorry.
Hollywood, which talks about hating, and playing around with metaphysics. And even the movie Dracula says, well, who knows if God exists at some point, the priest says, to kind of win Dracula over. you know, he doesn't say that exactly, but he says something to the effect of just do it for you know, you know, what was the line he said something about Dracula says, does Jesus God wants my soul or something? And he says, you know, uh,
Yeah,
even if,
your soul always belonged to him.
yeah, your
Yeah,
soul
something
always
like
belonged
that.
to
Yeah.
him. But he says this one line where he tries to equivocate, which, the Hollywood always does, where they try to put a priest figure that says, "Hey, whether this stuff is real or not, let's just make it real." You know what I mean? That kind of line, kind of a Jordan Peterson type Christianity or something. So they do hedge a little bit there, but overall, it's pretty explicitly Christian. Jesus is coming for you. He is the hound of heaven, and he will leave no soul left, including Dracula belongs to Christ. So
Yeah,
then you go on the internet and you see all these so-called trads and conservatives with icons of Christ talking about killing other people. I hate the Catholics. I hate the Protestants. I hate the Orthodox. I hate the Coptics. I was so irritated the other day. I saw that movie, The 21, which was this cartoon animation about the 21 people who were martyred. And it's the Coptic Christians that were martyred by ISIS years ago, and it's this beautiful animation. And then at the end of it, it said, I was enjoying the whole thing, and a friend introduced it to me. And then at the end, it said the Catholic Church, it said the Coptic Orthodox Church recognized these people as martyrs, as saints. And it said the Catholic Church did too. And I thought, my God, what about the Eastern Orthodox Church? I mean, they're so close to them, but they're not in the same jurisdiction. Why wouldn't they acknowledge what they did was beautiful here to lay down their life as a testimony, including one gentleman who wasn't even religious, but he saw how beautiful the others were. He decided, I'm with that God, right? So he joined that, maybe you can tell that part of the quote, but you were showing that to me the other day. This guy was lumped in with the rest of the Christians. He's like, I want to be with that God. That God's a beautiful God. Why doesn't the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is closer theologically to the Coptic Orthodox Church that those young men were a part of, why can't they acknowledge the beauty of there? But the Roman Catholic Church, which is farther away from them, now this is where we get into mimetic theory, right? The one who's closer to you, you have more rivalry with sometimes than the one farther away from you.
yeah, because the I'll be very blunt. The reason why they don't recognize those martyrs are like, or at least officially don't recognize those martyrs, would be to betray the fact that the Christian religion is universalistic. Universalistic in the sense that it belongs to everybody on this planet. Not just,
Amen.
and this may seem like a very controversial statement
Amen.
to certain people, but Jesus Christ doesn't just belong to the Christians. Jesus belongs to everybody. He can take any vessel he wants and act through that, through history, for his glory, for his witness. So there are certain denominations, like the one you mentioned, David, who really doesn't acknowledge that, who really thinks that God can open the mouth of a donkey in the Old Testament, but he can't open the mouth of another person of another denomination in this current day and age, which is completely inconsistent. And the reason for that is pure and simple tribalism, right? It's pure and simple tribalism. It's nothing but a holdover from ancient barbaric times. Like how, like we like to think that we're civilized in this day and age, but we think that there's a big gulf between us and the tribes in the primitive world, but we're really not that different. And sectarianism in Christianity, it's proof that there's a lot of tribalism that exists even amongst so-called professors of so-called adherents of the Christian faith. So that's really the thing. It's tribalism, pure and simple. Like I said, there's a lot of Christians who want Dracula to remain a monster, so that like the scene in the Scarface movie goes, you need a bad guy. You need to point your fingers at the bad guy. And a lot of Christians think that pointing at the bad guy gives them justification for their faith. So they're worshippers of hell. They're worshippers of hellfire rather than uh, being the worshippers of Christ. They're fascinated by hell. They're fascinated by destruction. They're fascinated by monsters. and they want to find those things in other places uh, that are beyond their borders, so that they can justify their mode of existence. Because but like religion, that this is what Girard talks about. Religion, understood properly in the anthropological sense, is binding people around a scapegoat. And modern day Christianity, like the mainstream majority of Christians aren't really Christians. They're functionally pagans in the anthropological sense, because they're always on the search for scapegoats.
Yeah.
And the scapegoat is the dehumanized monster, or whatever their imagination tells it to be.
I liked what you said earlier. You said Christianity belongs to the people of earth. Amen.
Because that's the incarnation. Like David, you were talking about the incarnation. What's the incarnational truth? The incarnational truth is Jesus Christ took on human nature. He didn't take on Christian human nature. He didn't take on Muslim human nature as if there were any difference. He took on human nature universally. And as a result, all humans are now elevated.
Why are people who are tend to be religious now? We can't scapegoat people, so we got to be careful because it's easy to start punching, right? So we try not to punch, but we got to be loving. But why are people who are religionists and traditionalists like this so excited about the word nation, but they don't like the word universe?
Because,
If you say the word universe, they're
yeah,
scared to death of Jesus. But if you say the word nation, they like to be a Christian nationalist any day of the world week, but to be a Christian anywhere with the word universe attached to it, you've got a problem, right?
well, in that sense, like I just remembered for some year, like when you mentioned nation, I just remembered the Nation of Islam. Like groups like the Nation of Islam are far more honest and far more consistent in that sense. Like so a lot of these traditional so-called Christians like to think that their faith is universal, but in their practices they demonstrate quite the contrary. They demonstrate the exact opposite of universe. You know, when Jesus says like when Jesus says when Jesus talks about like in John 3:16, Jesus doesn't say the world, Jesus says cosmos. That's like the entirety of the creation. He created order. It's completely, it engulfs everything that's created, even the rocks and stones, even the waters, everything, you know, even the inanimate objects, everything. So
And cosmos
like I said,
also has to do with the idea of the political and the cultural order of human
yeah, like
nation.
everything in the created, like everything you can imagine, everything within the created, even time itself, everything. So Jesus quite clearly says over there that he gave himself up for each and everything, each and every created thing. That means Jesus gave himself up for even the oxygen that we breathe,
Yeah.
like the environment, like everything. So that's like a lot of people can't comprehend that, because it's a carryover. Why are people tribalistic? Why are Christians so tribalistic? It's a carryover from the ancient world. It's a
Yeah.
carryover from the fallen world.
And here's the thing, the reason why they're afraid of the word universe, but they're not afraid of the word nation, is because nation can be divided and controllable. Nation can be
Yeah.
containable. The universe is infinite, and they're terrified of an infinite God with infinite love.
Yeah, and the nation is controllable. Not only is it be controlled, it has to be. It is mandatory to control it through
It's
force
constructed.
and go.
It's
It's not
constructed through
only just
language.
that. It's not only just that. It's completely manipulated and controlled via coercion, via violence. So that's a hard pill for a lot of tribalistic people to swallow. Like you, if you go to Africa and you tell the pygmies that the Maasai are also, you know, the same like you would expect them to be a little repulsed by what you're saying. But in the context that we're speaking in, the pygmies are actually us, and the Messiah is actually us. So it's the same carryover. Like people think that there is no way to survive without violence. People think that we have to use violence, and even Christians, like Christians, when they preach, they rarely talk about this. They rarely talk about so-called priests, pastors putting on all colors of all types of uniforms. They rarely talk about this, but this is the life-saving thing that they miss. Otherwise, what's the point of Jesus dying on the cross? His death was a violent execution. And if you're not going to talk about violence and how society manipulates and controls itself through violence, then what's the point of Jesus dying specifically through crucifixion? Why couldn't have he picked another form of death, like, I don't know, old age? Why didn't he die from old age? If he thought violence was not that important, there is a particular method to what he did. And so-called Christians, when they preach, say this and this and say this prayer, you will be saved, like what is completely meaningless. It renders it like in a very, like a mantra, like a magic mantra. Who you say something, it's you're automatically pardoned. But it's not just
When we
that.
look when we look at language, language is the domain of nation states. Language is the violence that we're talking about here. Language comes from the left hemisphere of the brain. Left hemisphere of the brain is connected to their serotogenic state, where serotonin and learned helplessness and stress manifests. The stress state that is serotonin dominant was the state collectively of the church when it took the gambit of Constantine to join the side of empire. And they were
Yeah,
stressed. I don't want to say this in any condemnatory sense. I say this with total, absolute compassion and empathy. They had been slaughtered, they had been killed, they had had bouts of persecution for so long that when the emperor said, "Actually, I think I might choose you to be my handmaiden for power," it was such a relief from that state that they were enraptured by it. And when they became enraptured by it, I would have done the same thing. I don't want my family members to be tortured. I don't want my churches to be burned and to be used as human torches. I don't want that. So I understand the yield towards when the Constantine comes and says, "Hey, I'll take care of you. Come and be my church, and I'll make you the religion of the land." And they took that opportunity. And unfortunately, it was at that point and before and after that whole process for hundreds of years that wedded them to power to the point where they stopped listening to Jesus and they started becoming dualists. They started worshiping a God of their own mind because the God of their own mind is the one that would tell them to kill somebody because they liked Marcion. Jesus Christ forgave people who were murdering him. He didn't just forgive people who got his theology wrong, who said Yahweh was a different God than him. He forgave people who hated everything about him himself. He did not kill them. But yet the church believed that they were right, and their right thinking, the thinking was more important than the incarnation embodied action. That it was more important to get Christology and Trinitarian theology right than it was to imitate the Lord Jesus Christ himself, who says, "Do not resist evil with violence. Turn the other cheek. Forgive 70 times 7. Don't repay evil for evil." This whole, in not just that he said those things, but he lived it every step of the way. Self-emptying nonviolence, a refusal to sacrifice your enemy. And yet the church sacrificed Arians. The church sacrificed Nestorians. The church sacrificed all these different folks who got wrong things. They did wrong things in their mind, and maybe it manifested with, because there's always that thing, oh, if you let someone have wrong theology, it might percolate as wrong behavior. That theology might come out of their fingertips and create bad behavior. Well, what's worse than murdering your own Christian neighbor? What's worse than taking his property because he has a wrong thinking about the Trinity? God is not an SAT test in the sky. That's what you're making God out to be when you want to persecute somebody for getting the Trinity wrong. Jesus said the way of the heaven is like little children. Little children will get Trinitarian theology wrong. Just ask them. Just ask them. Just ask the little children what they make of Christology. They'll get it wrong. So if you don't hurt a little child, you shouldn't hurt a little Arian or Arianist or Donatist. What? Come on, give me some more. Who we got? Nestorians. Who we got? Who is in the graveyard of Christianity proper? Give me some
Origin.
Who?
Origin.
Origin. Oh yeah, they tore his tail apart, didn't they? That guy was too smart. He was like
And
Piggy. He was like Piggy with Lord of the Flies. The dude was too smart. He had to throw a rock on him.
And the ironic thing is, like, Origin was probably the first proper comment. He wrote the first proper commentaries on the Bible. Everybody after him who was glorified as saints or canonized or whatever, they were just copying his method. So this is like basically how the wrestling fans turned against Hulk Hogan, but completely forgetting the fact that it was Hogan who made wrestling mainstream to begin with. Other people would not follow into wrestling if it wasn't for Hogan. So it's basically like Origin is the Hulk Hogan of the church. Everybody boos.
Origin's kind of like Moses. You always wondered what killed him on that mountain when he was almost to the promised land. You always wondered about that. It's those guys that are they're too charismatic. They're too, you know what I mean? They're exceptional. They're talented people. They do a lot. And you got those people. You always got those people like Job's friends sharpening their knives against Origin. Okay. Who's going to write history? The victors write history. Why are we writing history off of excluding and scapegoating and villainizing people? I don't care. Look, everything in the Nicene Creed is important, but it's not important enough to murder somebody over it and blaspheme Jesus Christ. That's where you become the Antichrist. You don't murder people over idea problems. That is the entire point of Christian civilization. And the fact that we got that wrong so early on has had deadly consequences for 2,000 years. I don't care what the consequences of what I'm saying may be for some people's opinions. It doesn't matter. What matters is what Christ exemplifies on the cross. That's where our theology lives or dies. And if your theology is an assault against the nonviolent witness of Christ on the cross, then we've got a problem. The problem we have is that there's something what I call Adamic sovereignty. That's the doctrine that has got the church locked up for 2,000 years. I call it the doctrine of Adamic sovereignty, which means that Adam is sovereign. That's the problem we have. Adamic sovereignty is the teaching that Adam damns you whether you know about it or not. Adam damns you whether you're in the right church or not. Adam damns you whether you knew about him, whether you believe the right doctrines about him. Adam damns you and makes the wolves tear apart the entrails of a deer on a snowy winter pass in the middle of the tundra. Adam damns the tiger to have to tear apart the little baby fawn in the jungle. Adam damns the tornadoes coming in and blowing up kids and obliterating entire villages. Adam damns human nature, human predicament. He damns us into a state of fallen behavior. And I don't care whether you do it the Augustine way, the Western way, or you do it Eastern way or any other way. Every person, every church jurisdiction I'm aware of has some kind of Adamic sovereignty usually built into the mainstream of its teaching. And that is that Adam's got you whether you knew about him or not, whether you believed in the right doctrines about him or not, whether you did any rituals of him or not, regardless of your ethnicity, your race, wherever you're from, Adam made a choice. And that choice affected you whether you like it or not. But these people teach that Christ is not the same as Adam. Christ's salvation, according to these people, is a repudiation of what Romans 5 clearly teaches and the whole Bible teaches. They repudiate that entire thing by saying that Christ can only save you if you join the right church jurisdiction, if you take the right ritual, if you have the right baptism, if you have the right form of the Eucharist and believe in the right ideas about it, if you were born in the culture and time in which the gospel would be presented to you in the right jurisdiction, if you believe that Jesus was existent, you have to have all those things checked off for Jesus to save you from what Adam did to you. Now, how in the world could you possibly say that Christ is your God and not Adam when you have made Christ so much weaker in his means of saving you than Adam? Adam curses you whether you like it or not. Adam curses you whether, like you said, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Orthodox, whether you got baptized, whether you got baptized in the Trinity, whether you got baptized in the name of some other, way of doing it, whether you were born in a place where Confucius was taught, whether you were born in a place where where Taoism was taught. Adam got you, but Jesus can't do the same according to their false teaching. Jesus cannot undo the systemic attack against your existence that Adam started. And that is where the church has gotten wrong to this very day. And that is at the heart of every single problem in our entire jurisdictional landscape of churches, is that problem right there. Because the moment you put Adam as your God, even though you're pretending that Jesus is your God, you produce the fruit that we have today, where we have a disembodied church unable to do anything but produce a disembodied culture, which is ripe for the picking of AI being turned into a satanic device, when if we would just incarnate the love of Christ in action, then we will begin to heal the problems of the disembodied culture that we're looking at the symptoms of right now.
Yeah, completely agree with you. The reason, like, a lot of Christians like to complain about communism and this, that, the reason why those things exist is because the church, whether it's whatever church, a lot of people say, oh, it's the Protestants. No, like, if you're part of the Catholic Church, if you're part of the Orthodox Church, it failed. It failed at providing the least of these, the bare necessities to survive, let alone thrive. So that's the reason why these things have come propped up. So communism is a testament to the failure of the churches. Not a lot of people say communism is the antichrist. No, it's a testament to the failure of the churches and its mission. A lot of people, a lot of church leaders like to prioritize one thing, or like aesthetics of the church, or like the whatever, like the picnics or the movie theaters or whatever. They like to prioritize all of that at the expense of feeding the vulnerable, feeding the poor, feeding the hungry, at the expense of saving the scapegoat, which no church, very few church does nowadays. And if any church leader tries to do that, if any church leader tries to show some concern for the least of these, that church leader is seen as the antichrist, as a a globalist compromiser.
Yeah.
And that's the extent to which the church has gone astray. So far as, like, if any person actually tries to imitate Christ, that person gets declared as the antichrist, whereas the real antichrist is seen as somebody who's very virtuous or very pious, in the churches at least.
Well, yeah, I mean that's if you're we're told to, if someone's promising a cure for cancer, it must only be villains that would do that.
Yeah.
Just or because because globalists are trying to do their false governments. Paul says governments in Romans 13. Paul says that governments are there to chastise and to correct and to have justice, right? And you could say governments are involved with some of this ecumenical, one world government church stuff that's trying to be done. So the traditionalists, again, they take the bait of the devil. They take the bait of the Antichrist, and they say, no unity within the churches, never. And they're just getting laughed at all the way to the bank of evil, because that's not the point. The church is a chastisement for the fact that we have not done the unity of church like John 17 expects us to do. John 17, Jesus says, I wish above all else that they were one, as you and I are one. And then the whole world would know that you sent me. The whole world doesn't know that Jesus was sent by God yet because we're not one. We're not one in spirit. We're not one in any of that. And so the traditionalists who know better, who should know better, because they're the ones that say they read the doctrines and adhere to everything right and right, but yet somehow they miss the point. In every jurisdiction, they're the ones saying no. Do not unite against any. Don't do not unite with any other church. The only time we can unite is when we're excluding someone who is a liberal or whatever it is. Excluding that we can unite temporarily, but there is no consistent unity because because globalists are the ones pushing for that. Therefore, it must be evil to follow John 17. No, the globalists are pushing it as a chastisement because the judgment that the government, God uses government in His sovereignty, not exactly always what government intends to do, but rather what it ends up doing. Does that make sense? So the chastisement and the justice that God administers through the government is not usually through governmental policy. The trads like to think that's the case too. We can become like Constantine and wield the sword for justice, then burn every correct witch, you know? But it's like, no, it's actually kind of a parody what Paul's talking about there. Is that ju- that government is used to correct and chastise people for their wrong behavior because the New World Order version of ecumenicalism will be an affront on the things that these churches are fearful of, but it's only insofar as the fact that they won't get their act right and start doing it
Yeah,
themselves the right way under Christ. Does that make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah,
That's the
yeah, it's the
chastisement.
same as what I said about communism. Communism exists because the church failed. Globalism, the ecumenism will exist because the church failed. It's as simple as that. When the church fails to achieve real unity and not fake unity around a monster, but real, actual unity, empathetic unity, loving unity, when it fails to achieve that, it will create an artificial unity, which will be a unity around the monsters. Like you mentioned about cancer, right? A lot of people, it's like a lot of Christians think that cancer should not be. No, 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 cancer is so valuable in teaching us about the virtues or eliminating the passions or whatever. Think about that for a moment. And just this is the point of our entire conversation of why this actually matters. If your theology is all effed up like that, if you think God is a totally demonic monster who bestows cancer upon his creation so that they will get better, think of how parents inside that theological circle will grow up to be.
And
They
how
won't
how
hesitate
they'll
to
treat kids.
scourge
Yeah,
their little kids,
yeah.
to the point that the flesh will come out of their bones, where and they will probably like create a cycle, endless cycle of trauma.
That's why
And
kids are running. That's why kids are running to the Church of Liberalism or whatever, wokeism,
yeah.
because they've been taught stupid theology through violent parenting and psychological abuse and all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where it comes from.
Yep. Yeah, if you worship hell, your life will look like hell. So like I mean it's true though, because if you like if cancer, if you say cancer should not be eradicated, oh no, I like the hellfire, I like it, it purifies the soul or whatever. Well, I mean, then don't complain, when your life turns to hellfire, when your life becomes cancer. Like when you get cancer, then I'll come and say, oh, God is purifying you right now, I guess. It's not a good, it's not a easy thing, the chemotherapy and all of that. It's very painful to like to stand up and say that, oh my goodness, cancer, we should not cure cancer. It's like such a apathetic, nihilistic way to look at God's creation, and to completely an affront to the creator himself. So it's totally anti-Christian in my view.
I think the Adamic sovereignty idea that I've pushed forth is extended to the afterlife as well. I mean, if Adam is sovereign on this life, then Adam's choice is still sovereign over your life in the life to come, right? That somehow that cursed fallen state that warps you against the love of God cannot be overcome. Wait a second. Is that really what we believe, that Adam is so sovereign? Let's just say, like the thought experiment. I think you mentioned, I've had David Bentley Hart on before. He said, imagine you said one guy left his book, That All Shall Be Saved.
Yeah.
That one guy is only destined to hell. So if Adam cursed all of us, but one guy was so cursed he couldn't resist it ever. So only one guy actually ends up at hell. It still means that Adam is at least on the same level of power as God himself still, because he's an equal deity that said, I got one soul eternally as mine.
He is the real Christ. That's the real Christ.
What's that?
That guy, if like one guy ends up in hell to save all of us, to give all of humanity salvation, that guy is the real Christ actually, according to the atonement theory of some of these theologians. Because what is the atonement theory? Is that somebody has to pay the price, right? Somebody has to bear the brunt of God's wrath in order for there to be salvation.
Well, but there's churches that throw away penal substitution and they still got the same violent.
They say, yeah, it's not a question of doctrine. It's a question of anthropology. It's a question of what your mind, what your imitation of Christ actually looks like. So it doesn't matter. Like, it's like the hippies from the 1960s, oh, peace, nirvana, love, and all of that. But they're always like killing each other, serial killing each other, or like Charles Manson. They're always going around, but they're talking about peace and all of that. So the same thing goes for some of these denominations who say, oh no, we don't believe in a sacrificial God. We don't believe all of that, but they still exercise it. They still propose formulas like that on a daily basis.
And their whole attitude is a sacrificial view of creation, that creation is profane still. That's dualism. That's Gnosticism.
Yeah.
That's the same thing. The creation is profane. That the marital union is inferior to being single. Well, if that's the case, then why did God create Adam and Eve and tell them to go procreate and be fruitful and multiply? And why does the new Adam give us even more power to do that? Why is the point of life to repent for existing? That sounds like something a devil would teach humans so that they have despair in life and they never produce good fruits. Just repent because you shouldn't exist. Your existence is a problem. Once you start telling human beings that their mere existence is a problem they have to solve, no wonder they turn to nihilism. God does not think that your existence is a problem he has to solve through violence. God does not believe that. Your existence is not a problem for God to solve in terms of like, this is an issue. I don't know what to do with you. You're filthy. I hate you. So dumb to think this way. This is not what God intended. God intended, what is the purpose? The early church taught what Jesus saved us from. He saved us from death. And the whole death mindset that comes around with that, which is the very thing we're attacking right now. It is a death mindset that says, don't stick your neck up and try to heal your neighbors of cancer. God might strike you down for being boastful. Don't stick your neck up and have a good time. Don't smile while you take the Lord's Supper. This is not a time of triumph. This is a time that you might be struck down if you don't have a blank stare on your face. I watch people take the Lord's Supper. They don't act like it's a triumph. They act like it's a curse. They're more terrified of being cursed with the wrong attitude.
I'll tell you, I've had actual Christian, so-called, and I'm not talking about some illiterate fundamentalist hillbilly in the backwoods or something like that. Actual Christian academians say to me that if you want to cure cancer, then you're setting the stage for the Antichrist. Which is completely unbiblical. Nowhere in scriptures is such a notion taught. It's something entirely made up in their
because they hate matter.
Demented mind.
They hate matter. If you hate matter, you will say that, right? If you believe that matter is secondarily in importance to the spiritual domain, then you can justify all kinds of violence and evil things being done to people's bodies. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can kill Marcionites, Arians, all those people that we're talking about. What's the one called monophysites? Which one's that? Is that what the Coptics are? Is that why they didn't get their martyrs recognized by the Orthodox Church? Or
I
how's
think
that work?
so.
Are they
Yeah, yeah.
monophysites?
But those 21 martyrs are not martyrs because they didn't get the actual the whatever blueprint about Christ human nature right or whatever.
That is
That's
not Christianity, folks. That's not. I don't care what you say. That attitude is not Christian. You don't say, well, we can't recognize these people as martyrs because their ideas were a little off in their jurisdiction. I guarantee you that most of those guys, especially the guy who wasn't even like raised Christian, did not have that doctrinal dispute at all in probably in their mind at one point in their life between the Coptics and the Eastern Orthodox, right? I guarantee you they probably never even thought of that issue once. But to say that we are the witness of Christ on earth and then to deny someone's martyrdom because they got a technicality wrong in their head or may not have, again, is to assault everything that Christ said. He said, let the little children come to me. I guarantee you the little children, every one of them around the world, probably, unless they were, violently abused to, imitate the exact doctrinal line, most kids in their natural state would have not gotten whatever doctrines right that the Coptics supposedly got wrong. You get what I'm trying to say? So that's
and
obviously not the intention of Jesus, right? We have to get Jesus right. You could say all day long that I am the one true church, but that's a bride. And we know that the bride has a head, and the bride's head and the covering is Jesus Christ. Not the words on the biblical text, but the living Jesus Christ, who is testified to us through the Holy Spirit. Living. The Holy Spirit is alive. Jesus Christ is alive, and the Father is alive. And the revelation that they give us is in our hearts. And it does set us free from deception. But we are not set free from deception if we are killing because of ideas. That is not the way of Christ. That's the very distinctive that makes Christ who he is he doesn't do that. He refuses to sacrifice his enemy.
And that's the ultimate witness of a Christian, the refusal to sacrifice the enemy. And in that case, the 21 martyrs were far more effective theologians than any so-called Orthodox who got the right theology, but goes around doing all kinds of sinful activities. That's real theology, is how effectively you witness Christ in your life, in your practices. Otherwise, any person can get up and quote from any theological book. It takes nothing to do that. But it takes a whole new level of theological understanding to die non-violently at the hands of violent perpetrators, to die as a scapegoat.
Or to go online and find out that this church is technically the one that's correct over the other.
Yeah.
That's not
Anybody
really
can do
hard. Yeah, anybody can do that. That's called picking an ideology. That's not Christianity. Christianity is your lived witness. Christianity is your nonviolent refusal to sacrifice your enemy. That means if whatever you are, if you're listening to my show right now, you're a Catholic or you're a Baptist, and somebody comes in from another jurisdiction, you aren't to say, hey, finally you made it to the real church. Welcome. You're to say, what can I learn from you? What can I do? You're not to say, you're to live an attitude of washing their feet. You're to be like Christ. You're not to walk in. When they walk into your church, you're not to say, oh, finally you figured out we were right. Thank you. Sit down. Let's go on this journey. Oh, wait. yeah, we're all worms here. Don't worry about it. I'm not being arrogant here, even though we all figured out we're the real church. We're all worms and deserving of hell. That's called false humility, folks. Because if it's wrapped
Yeah,
up in the language of exclusion and hellfire and sacrificial violence and arrogance, it's just false humility. Again, rhetoric, it's cheap sophistry. What matters is what your character's like, how you treat your neighbor. You cannot love your neighbor if you cannot love God if you don't love your neighbor. That's the point, right? If you can't love your neighbor, you don't love God. They're intertwined together. It's like when people say, in divorce culture, you'll hear people say, "Oh, he's a great daddy, but I just couldn't be married to him. Terrible husband." Wait a second. No, your relationship is Trinitarian. The relationship that one has with their child is interpenetrated with the relationship you have with that child's parent and both parents. And they're all intertwined together. This is the mutual interpenetration of the Trinity manifested in the image of God that we all have. So you cannot sit there and divorce these things and say, well, we can pick and choose. We have to accept the incarnational reality that it means to be a Christian. And this, folks, is the heart of the matter. No matter what others you listen to any other show that we do or any other show other people do, just remember the hellscape that we could enter into with wars that we're already into. I'm just saying it's still a little cozy. But the pain and the suffering that we could all go through starts with the disembodied church. That's where we get the disembodied AI nihilism, the disembodied sex, where you're supposed to have sex like a toy rather than a sacrament, where you have the disembodied health, where you're supposed to numb symptoms rather than actually heal the body and live vibrantly. All these things are downstream from the church's refusal to incarnate the living witness of Christ. And so I'm asking you to be bold in imitating Christ every day. Don't be afraid of what people will call you. Don't be afraid of what friends you might lose. That's not important. What matters is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And in that doing that, you will love God. You cannot love God apart from loving your neighbor. To love God away from loving your neighbor is to not truly love God. If you hate your neighbor to love God, you don't truly love God.